Wuxian had only managed to retreat a single step when his ankle rolled beneath him and he seemed in danger of falling to his knees. Lan Wangji's expression changed. He rushed toward Wei Wuxian and clutched his wrist in the same iron grip he had exhibited at Dafan Mountain. Steadying him, the man then knelt on one knee and inspected his leg. A bit horrified, Wei Wuxian hurriedly said, "Don't, Han Guangjun, you don't have to do this." Lan Wangji inclined his head slightly and stared at Wei Wuxian with his pale eyes, before lowering his head again and continuing to roll up his companion's trouser leg. Wei Wuxian's hand was still in Lan Wangji's grip, so he could do nothing more than look up at the sky. The black bruise of a curse mark covered his entire leg. Lan Wangji examined it for a long time. "I only left for a few hours," he said sharply. Throwing up his free hand and shrugging, Wei Wuxian replied, "A few hours is a long time. Anything can happen. Come on, stand up." He twisted his hand around and pulled his friend up, continuing, "It's just an ordinary curse mark. When whatever it is comes after me, we can just fight it and get rid of it. Han Guangjun, you have to help me. If you don't, I won't be able to deal with it myself." "Did you catch that person? Is it him? Where is he now?" Lan Wangji's gaze flicked toward the sign on the inn at the far end of the long street. "First, let's deal with the stone fortress issue," Wei Wuxian said. He immediately began walking in the inn's direction. He hadn't noticed it before, but his legs seemed to be going somewhat numb, probably due to Zidian. It was very fortunate that Zhang Cheng still knew to control Zidian's power and hadn't immediately electrocuted him into a charred corpse. Standing behind him, Lan Wangji suddenly called out, "Wei Ying." Wei Wuxian froze. A moment later, he acted as though he hadn't heard his name. "What?" he asked. "You moved the curse mark from Jinling's body to your own, did you not?" This was not a question, but a statement. Wei Wuxian didn't offer a clear reply, so Lan Wangji spoke again. "You encountered Zheng Wanyin." It wasn't difficult to determine that the fresh scars sitting atop the curse mark were from Zidian. Wei Wuxian turned around. "As long as both of us are alive in this world, we'll meet sooner or later." "You should not walk," Lan Wangji said. "If I don't walk, then are you going to carry me on your back?" Lan Wangji regarded him silently. Wei Wuxian's smile froze on his face, and an ominous shadow swept over him. If the person in front of Wei Wuxian had been the Lan Zhan of years past, these words would have definitely made him choke, and he would have either thrown Wei Wuxian a frosty glare and promptly departed, or completely ignored him. But exchange him for the Lan Wangji of today, and it was very difficult to say how he'd respond. Indeed, upon hearing Wei Wuxian's question, Lan Wangji moved in front of him and genuinely appeared as though he were about to stoop, bend his knees, and pick him up, like a noble submitting and serving a commoner. Startled another time, Wei Wuxian hurriedly said, Wait, I was just saying things. I was struck by Zidian a couple of times, and it's making me go a little numb, that's all. It's not like my leg is broken. I'm a grown man. If I'm hanging off your back, it'll look bad." "Would it look so bad?" Lan Wangji replied. "Would it look good?" Wei Wuxian asked. A beat of silence passed before Lan Wangji spoke again. "But you once carried me in such a manner." "Really? How come I don't remember?" "You never remember these things." Lan Wangji's reply was almost a whisper. Everyone says my memory's bad, Wei Wuxian said. Fine, if it's bad, it's bad. In any case, I'm not getting on your back. Are you certain? Wei Wuxian's tone was so decisive, it could have sliced through iron. I'm not getting on your back. The pair was deadlocked for a few moments, when suddenly Lan Wangji's arm wrapped around Wei Wuxian's waist. He lowered himself slightly, and his free hand came for Wei Wuxian's knees. The latter was shorter than Lan Wangji, as well as lighter, and as soon as the taller man grabbed hold of him, he was easily lifted up. His entire person was now in midair, supported by a pair of sturdy arms. Wei Wuxian hadn't at all suspected that "I'm not getting on your back" would lead to such an outcome. In fact, this was the first time he'd ever been treated this way, in this life or the previous one. Terrified, he shouted, "Lan Chan!" Holding him up, Lan Wangji walked forward perfectly steadily. His reply was also perfectly even. You said you did not wish to be carried on my back. But I didn't say I want to be carried like this either. Fortunately, night had already fallen and the streets were devoid of people, so it wasn't as mortifying as it could have been. Plus, Wei Wuxian wasn't a thin-skinned, easily embarrassed sort of person. Thus, after being carried a few steps, he relaxed and began playing with the sash at the front of Lan Wangji's chest. He acted as though he was about to tear it off. You want to see whose skin is thicker, don't you? He said, laughing. The cool and clear scent of sandalwood swirled around them. Lan Wangji did not look at Wei Wuxian, but gazed steadily forward, entirely motionless, his face displaying its familiar, chilly, incomparably solemn and righteous expression. Upon seeing Lan Wangji turn a deaf ear to his antics, Wei Wuxian continued playing with the sash while thinking to himself. I didn't expect Lan Chan's desire to avenge himself upon me to be this strong. He is now trying to get back at me for each and every time I teased him back in the day, and is determined to prevent me from having any fun. This is a bit too much personal growth. Not only has his cultivation improved, his formerly thin skin has as well. Lan Chan, you already recognized me at Dafan Mountain, didn't you? Wei Wuxian asked. Lan Wangji confirmed. How? Wei Wuxian asked with curiosity. The man lowered his eyelids and glanced at him through his eyelashes. Do you want to know? Wei Wuxian replied with certainty. You told me yourself. I told you myself because of Jinling, or because I summoned Wenning. It can't be either of them, right? Something seemed to ripple in the depths of Lan Wangji's eyes. However, the slight, nearly undetectable motion disappeared in a single blink, and the two bottomless pools were once again tranquil. Think over the answer yourself, the man replied sternly. I'm only asking you because I can't think of it. This time, regardless of how he peppered Lan Wangji with his inquiries, the man refused to open his mouth and answer. He carried Wei Wuxian into the inn, but other than the man at the front desk, who spat out his water in surprise, none of the witnesses had too excessive a reaction. As they arrived at the entrance to one of the rooms, Wei Wuxian spoke. All right, we're here. Shouldn't you put me down now? It's not like you have a third hand to open the door. But before Wei Wuxian had even finished speaking, Lan Wangji did something very impolite. This was perhaps the first time in his life that he had ever behaved like such a ruffian. Still holding Wei Wuxian in his arms, he kicked open the door. the double doors swung apart, and the person sitting inside, who was conspicuously wringing his hands and trembling, immediately cried out, "Hangongjun, I don't know. When he saw clearly how the bodies of the entering pair were arranged, he slipped into a daze and only managed to finish his sentence through force of will. I really don't know. Indeed, it was the know-nothing. As though he hadn't seen anything, Lan Hongji carried Wei Wuxian inside and placed him on top of a bamboo mat. Niu Huisang's appalled expression plainly showed how unbearable he found the spectacle. He immediately unfolded his fan and hid his face behind it. But Wei Wuxian peered over it and scrutinized him. Though many years had passed, his old schoolmate hadn't changed much. The kind of person he was back then was still the kind of person he was now. Niu Huisang had a refined, elegant face and a cultured, literary air, but wore an expression which suggested that anyone could mold and manipulate him at will. He was tastefully attired from head to foot, displaying a keen and confident eye for style, and the devotion of much thought and effort to his clothing. Rather than a master of a cultivation clan, he was more appropriately described as a rich and idle dandy. Wearing dragon robes could not make him appear like the crown prince, nor could carrying a saber make him appear like a cultivator. It appeared that he was prepared to take his secret with him to the grave. Thus, Lan Hongji produced the piece of cloth that the spirit dog had torn off and placed it on the table. Niu Huisang covered the missing portion of his sleeve and spoke as though gloomy black clouds hung threateningly over his head. I just happened to pass by, that's all. I really don't know anything. If you don't know, then I'll talk, Wei Wuxian said. Let's see if you start knowing once you start listening. Niu Huisang stammered, at a loss for words. Wei Wuxian continued. In the region around Qinghe's Xinglu Ridge, there are tales about a man-eating ridge and a man-eating fortress. In reality, however, no one has fallen victim to such things, so the tales are only rumors. But the rumors make ordinary people avoid the ridge, and therefore their true function is as a line of defense, and they are only the first. Since there's a first line of defense, there must also be a second, the walking corpses. Even if someone isn't scared off by the rumors of the man-eating fortress and ventures onto the ridge anyway, or if someone gets lost and winds up there, they'll still flee at the sight of walking dead. But there aren't very many walking corpses, and the level of threat they pose is low, so they won't cause any real harm. The third line of defense is the maze illusion surrounding the stone fortress itself. The first two lines of defense only keep out ordinary people, so this is the sole line of defense against cultivators. But its function is limited. It only works on common cultivators. So if a cultivator wielding a spiritual weapon or possessing a spiritual dog, a cultivator specializing in breaking illusions, or a cultivator on the level of Hangongjun enters, they will inevitably break through. The purpose of these three preventative measures is to keep anyone from discovering the fortress on Xinglu Ridge. The identity of the builders of the fortress couldn't be more obvious. This is the territory of the Qinghe Nia clan. Other than the Nia clan, no one else could set up these obstacles so easily. On top of that, you just happen to appear near the stone fortress and leave behind evidence. What exactly was the Qinghe Nia clan's goal when they constructed a man-eating fortress. Where did the corpses inside the walls come from? Were they eaten by the fortress? Chief Nia, if you don't offer a clear explanation today, I'm afraid that when your secret gets out later, the cultivation world will band together, come knocking at your door, and demand answers. Even if you explain yourself then, no one will listen or believe you. It isn't any sort of man-eating fortress at all. Niu Huisang surrendered and replied despairingly, It's only my clan's ancestral tomb. Ancestral tomb? Who put sabers instead of bodies inside the coffins of their ancestral tomb? Wei Wuxian asked. Niu Huisang's face contorted as though he were on the verge of breaking into funeral wails. Han Gongjun, before I say anything, could you swear to me that, by our two families' relationship and our older brother's sworn brotherhood, no matter what I say, you and the one beside you will never share it with anyone? Later on, in case others do find out, could you also say a few good words on my behalf and act as my witnesses? You've always been the most trustworthy of men. If you just promise me, I'll believe you. As you wish, Lan Wangji said. You claim the building isn't a man-eating fortress at all, so it's never eaten anyone? Wei Wuxian asked. Niu Huisang clenched his teeth nervously before obediently replying. It has eaten people before. Wow, Wei Wuxian remarked. But it was only once, Niu Huisang immediately added. Plus, it mostly wasn't my clan's fault. Plus, it was decades ago. That was when the stories about the man-eating fortress on Shenglu Ridge started. I only fanned the flames and amplified them several times. That's all.